Good day everyone. Welcome to our class. In our previous lesson, we discussed the characteristics of the different organ systems. You also learned the functional relationships of the different organ systems in ensuring the survival of the organisms. For the learning objectives, first is to identify the mechanism of evolutionary change among organisms leading to modification and diversity, followed by explaining how organisms change over time, showing descent with modification from common ancestors. Lastly, relate the importance of mechanisms of evolution to organismal diversity and survival. Earth has become a witness to countless lifeforms that live in every conceivable corner. Our planet has been a major factor in the emergence and disappearance of many organisms that diversify into various forms just to survive. This is the result of evolution, a continuous process that persists up to this very day and will go on as long as there are organisms out there trying to survive. Let us define evolution. It is the change in the heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. And the mechanisms of evolutionary changes include genetic drift, migration or gene flow, mutation, natural selection and non-random mating. Our modern conception of evolution started with Charles Darwin and his idea of natural selection, survival of the fittest, that explain why certain individuals thrive while others fail to leave a legacy. Then came genetics to explain the underlying mechanism, changes in organisms caused by random mutations of genes. In the 1850s, Darwin wrote an influential and controversial book called On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. Darwin describes how organisms evolve over generations through the inheritance of physical or behavioral traits. According to the theory, individuals with traits that enable them to adapt to their environments will help them survive and have more offspring, which will inherit those traits. Individuals with less adaptive traits will less frequently survive to pass them on. Over time, the traits that enable species to survive and reproduce will become more frequent in the population and the population will change or evolve. Through natural selection, Darwin suggested, genetically diverse species could arise from a common ancestor. Genetic drift along with natural selection, mutation, and migration is one of the basic mechanisms of evolution. In each generation, some individuals may, just by chance, leave behind a few more descendants than other individuals. The genes of the next generation will be the genes of the lucky individuals, not necessarily the healthier or better individuals. Another is the bottleneck. It is when a population bottleneck is an event that drastically reduces the size of a population. The bottleneck may be caused by various events, such as an environmental disaster, the hunting of a species to the point of extinction, or habitat destruction that results in the deaths of organisms. Furthermore, in population genetics, the founder effect is the loss of genetic variation that occurs when a new population is established by a very small number of individuals from a larger population. Gene is a fundamental agent of evolution based on the dispersal of genes between populations of a species. It involves the active or passive movement of individual plants, animals, gametes, or seeds. Gene flow involves not just dispersal but also the successful establishment of the immigrant genotypes in the new population. Gene flow is often confusingly referred to as migration, but the latter term is best reserved to describe dispersal behaviors involving a seasonal or longer-term round trip. Mutation plays an important role in evolution. The ultimate source of all genetic variation is mutation. Mutation is important as the first step of evolution because it creates a new DNA sequence for a particular gene, creating a new allele. Let us also differentiate Lamarckism theory versus Darwin's theory. Lamarckism is a theory of evolution based on the principle that physical changes in organisms during their lifetime, such as greater development of an organ or a part through increased use, could be transmitted to their offspring. On the other hand, Darwin's theory involves natural selection and the struggle for existence. When an organism is fit and can adapt to its environment, it survives and more chance to reproduce. We learned that evolution is the process by which living species change and new species come into being. Systematics is the effort to find how modern life forms are related. Today, most systematists look for the evolutionary steps that led from ancient to modern forms of life. Those steps are called phylogeny, a term that means the origin of groups. Phylogenetics is important because it enriches our understanding of how genes, genomes, species evolve. Thank you for listening. Kindly check your next task posted in the Class Dojo portfolio.